So I spent the morning at an estate sale looking for comic books. How did that go? Not well. Let's talk about it next on this video from Bronzeville Comics. So I was looking for ads for estate sales, which I often do, and I saw one that had some promising pictures in it. It was definitely a collector, and there was mostly sports memorabilia, big baseball signed jerseys, signed helmets, signed football helmets, big Mickey Mantle memorabilia, baseball cards, and comic books. And there were some really high grade looking Silver Age keys. So I got here 2 hours and 2 minutes before the estate sale started, and I got myself number 18. Now, I don't know if you're seeing this video backwards. That looks like 81, but it is 18. If it was 81, I'd probably just go home. And there are some comic book books in front of me. I was hoping most of the people that'd be here early would be the sports guys. So we'll see what's in there. I think it was worth the shot. It was about a half an hour from the house. So we're talking about, getting up 3 hours before the sale began to get here. And I'm still well into double digits. So we'll see what's in there. And if I got anything, you'll see this. If it was a complete, well, maybe I'll make a video if it was a complete bust too. So we'll see. Hey there, panelologists. This is Jim from Bronzeville Comics coming to you with another video. Before we get started, like, comment, subscribe. Instagram, Bronzeville_comics. Whatnot, Bronzeville_comics. We do sales Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. If you've not yet signed on to Whatnot, link in the description of this video. Also in this video, the description is a link to my eBay store as well as my email. So I had been, I had found an online listing for an estate sale that was maybe a little more than half an hour from my house, that I've been targeting for probably over a week. And I saw the sale, and it said it had comic books, but it didn't lead with comic books. They had a lot of sports memorabilia. They had other collectibles, coins, Coca-Cola collectibles, and comic books were kind of buried. They weren't the lead. So I took that as potentially promising in terms of the fact that it would bypass a lot of eyes. And they had a lot of pictures of stuff that they were showing. Evidently, the collector was like a big Yankee fan, a Mickey Mantle fan, had a lot of Mickey Mantle memorabilia. And they earlier in the week, they said, we'll post more pictures on Wednesday. And they did post more pictures on Wednesday, but no more comic books. But I did see some really promising books in there. And I said, okay, I think this is worth a look to see what they have, because, there could be more from that era. Let's take a look. So I ventured down, and the sale started at 9 a.m. I got there just before 7 a.m. And I parked, and I saw 4 guys standing on the sidewalk. And I walk up, I go, you guys here for the estate sale? And they go, yeah, we're here, blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, I figured that, 4 guys standing on the sidewalk at 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning wasn't, something that was going to happen otherwise. So there was a guy in a van giving away numbers. And this is very typical of estate sales that I've come across. They don't really spend a lot of time on this number system. Sometimes they'll have the first person showing up start a list. They'll put just a sheet of paper out with names on it. So the guy in the van just kind of ripped a little number off a piece of loose leaf paper and handed it to me, and I got number 18. So I didn't have to stay there. It was kind of too far away from home. Plus there was a toll to go and come back. So I went and I got some gas for the car, and I did some research on future YouTube videos and just kind of waited. I got out of the car with maybe about 20, 25 minutes before the scheduled start time. I was talking to one guy. Him and his buddy were there for comics, and he was from Texas and had an estate sale business in Texas, but was up here visiting his parents. He was a guy who was younger than me. So I'm like, okay, that's a comic book guy. He had number 9. He had been there. They had gotten there at 2 o'clock in the morning. But there was, I don't know, there's nobody around, and they came back at 5 and got number 9. But I can only imagine what numbers 1 through 8 had to go through. So came close to the time for the sale, line up by number. Everybody lined up. They let 5 people into the house at a time. We were waiting and waiting because I imagine the folks that went into the house were looking through things rather diligently. But the thing is, we were lined up in the driveway to go into the back of the house, and people were leaving through the front. So you didn't see people coming and going. Sometimes, you'll see, if you're waiting in the front, you'll see somebody there for the comic books just walking out with boxes and boxes of comic books. I didn't really see anybody leave. Now, the Coca-Cola stuff I could see was set up in the garage, and they had a gate on their driveway, so we could see everything there. And then people were in the house. So I was talking to a guy and his wife were in line behind me, and he was a coin collector. So we were just talking about collecting and different platforms and different ways to buy and sell. And there's similarity with those collectibles. So that was kind of passing a time. I also ran into a guy, Andrew, who was a friend of the channel that I've seen previously at Street Side Anthony's. He got there a little bit later. I think he had number 36 or 38. Anyway, just talking about, comics and stuff in general. So finally, it was my time to go inside. So they kind of had, almost like a maze. You went into the basement. There were parts in the basement to look through. Then you'd go upstairs, and there were areas upstairs to look at, and then go out through the front door. So the comics were in the basement. So I went to the basement, and I'll show you a quick peek at like the first kind of things I looked at.
10 each. Take 1, take 2, 25. All right. You gotta go back that way. No, take a look, and I have to put them right back in the box. Why do you have 200 already? I know. 200. I want you to be happy. What are you charging me on that? 30. I put a lot of stuff there. I'm gonna bet but I don't care. So it's funny, I don't know when comes to me and be like, hey man, I got a great deal. I got a great deal last time. I'm gonna give you double this time because I got so good last time.
So I saw, you have the Amazing Spider-Man 300, you have Marvel Premiere 15, the first Iron Fist, some early new X-Men comics. So I started to take them out, and somebody says, oh no, you have to leave them where they belong. They're selling everything as a lot. And they want $20,000 for the lot. I'm like, okay, that's quite a bit. And the fact that there were people in there before me, I don't know how many, but I know there were comic book people in there before me, means that nobody walked away with a lot. And I went through. So I counted about 19 long boxes of comic books. Some were shorts, but you put 2 shorts together, make a long. About 19 long boxes of comics. A tub. There were some treasuries, a couple of masterworks piled up. And a lot of it was 90s bulk. Not all of it. I mean, there was certainly higher quality stuff. So you can see there was kind of a run of ASM, but it wasn't a complete run. There was X-Men, but it had a couple of early new X-Men issues, and then jump all the way to 143. Jump past all the good stuff to 143. And the stuff that was in the later hundreds, where you do have some minor keys, didn't look to be in the highest of grade. It looked to be maybe in the 8 to 9 range, just by looking through the bags, and there were no boards. And then I looked through some other stuff. There were a couple of old adventure comics. There was a little run of Lois Lane, which did have number 70, the first Silver Age Catwoman. but a lot of Death of Superman era, some Valiant, early Image stuff, and I was not overly impressed. So I was waiting to talk to the guy. So there was like one guy letting people in. There were a few other folks working there. I guess to kind of keep an eye on everybody and make sure people weren't, trying to pocket stuff. And then there's the guy who I'm going to imagine was running the estate sale from the company. So he had a lot of people asking questions. So there was a guy in front of me who was buying a lot of sports memorabilia. There was a lot of sports memorabilia. Game signed jerseys. I just saw like on the shelves next to the comic books, like a Mike Schmidt and a Ken Griffey Jr. Cincinnati Reds era. So this guy was going through and pricing stuff. And the problem was that the guy running everything was looking up individual items as they were coming to him. He was looking on his phone, maybe at eBay sold. And sometimes with memorabilia, fairly unique items, it's hard to find on eBay sold. There was like a Jimmy Fox signed card that was framed with his, I think it was Hall of Fame. I forget the name of the company, but there was a company that did drawings of all the Hall of Famers every year. Anyway, so he was kind of going through stuff, this bad, no, how much for the statue, how much for the Griffey jersey, all those sorts of things. So I was waiting patient. I said, the comics you're selling, everything is a lot. He goes, yeah, $20,000 there. The 7 best ones are upstairs. And so I ventured upstairs to see if I would be blown away, but they had shown in the pictures the best stuff. And it was early-ish Amazing Spider-Man. I don't think there were any single-digit issues. There was 13 and 14. And those caught my eye. In the pictures, they looked really good. So if I remember correctly, it was 13, 14, 15, 16, I think, 19, 20, and I can't remember the others, right? Now, when I was downstairs kind of waiting to talk to the guy, so I saw a guy who was there with his kid. His kid picked up a signed, I forget even who did the signature, copy of Adventures of Superman 500 in the white poly bag. And, they're like, no, you sell everything as a lot. He's like, the whole box? And I think that's... So he was looking through stuff. And these are like beat up dollar bin books. So he had... And let's like, this one's incomplete, right? So he pulled like something out of the box. It had only bags on it. Some of them didn't even have bags. Very few boards. And he was like pushing it back to kind of read the top of it. And I'm like, don't do that. It was like Lois Lane's. And then there were like 2 copies of the same book, and he pulled them up, and then he just kind of smashed them down. It was really manhandling the books. And I saw that too. Like on the video I showed, and this is, I mean, I think there's a little bit different clientele at shows versus estate sales. And maybe it's because somebody's right on top of you at a show, but when you're looking at a show, I have noticed almost every person that looks at a comic show, they look with care. You can flip through, especially if they're bagged and boarded, but they're not like kind of manhandling the books that they're not going to buy. Or certainly they shouldn't be manhandling the books they are going to buy. So and this is another part of my story. So I talked to him. He said, yeah, $20,000 for everything. The 7 best are upstairs. So I go upstairs and I'm looking around and I don't see any comic books. So there's a woman sitting at the table there, and I guess she was like almost like the cashier as people were leaving. And I asked about the comic book. She says, yeah, I can show them to you, but he doesn't want anyone touching them because somebody was kind of going through them. I guess somebody just decided on their own, which is bad protocol in any regard. If it's not yours, you have to at the very least ask. And he, I guess somebody was manhandling the books. My imagination is that somebody like wanted to look through the books, do the page count. If you have an an Amazing Spider-Man 20, you want to make sure the pinup is included in that. So, page 16, if you look that up, page 16 is often missing, and it's qualified grade. But so she was like holding it kind of arm's length, the books, like just showing me each one. So she took the stack of books and kind of put them like at her arm's length, and I was looking over a table, looking at them and looking at the Spider-Man issues that I spoke about, trying to, just by looking at the bag and board from like 3 or 4 feet away, what the approximate condition was, just to kind of get an idea of what the value of the collection actually might be. And the books looked reasonably sharp, right? Maybe like a 7. You know, the 14 looked pretty good, but it was impossible to really tell. And so that was, I got in my car and I went home. And that was my experience at the estate sale. So a couple of things to keep in mind about estate sales. There are essentially 2 different types of estate sales. There's one that's run by estate sale companies. And those, they will send a lot of notifications out to people that sign up for their email lists and what have you. And there are people who are not necessarily focused on just one thing. There are people who are focused, I'm just here for the comics, I'm just here for the baseball cards, I'm just here for the coins, I'm just here for, the tchotchkes or whatever. And then people will go in and buy whatever. They'll try to flip stuff fairly quickly. And the problem is they don't always have things priced beforehand. So you're kind of walking blind. And the other big problem, and I've run into this on several occasions, is the comics are usually sold as a lot. They want to sell everything. And I can understand that with this particular comic collection, because it was, let's say it was 19 long boxes. Probably at least half of it, maybe up to 2/3 of it, was filler issues, right? And not even, it wasn't even old enough to be interesting. It wasn't even like 80s, 70s or 80s, right? There were some big books in there, obviously. The original collector had some really good Silver Age Spider-Man. But if you want to move the collection, if you want to move that bulk, you want somebody to take the whole thing. I thought the $20,000 price was a little unreasonable, because you're talking about, maybe those 7 Spider-Man books, if they come back graded in the 6 to 8 range, maybe you can kind of get, make your money back or get close to it. But you're assuming a lot of risk. Unless you're going to have the opportunity, like looking at any collection of someone who knows what they have, and you're going to pay closer to fair market value, you want to make sure that those books, those big Silver Age keys, are intact with no restoration. When someone's holding a $3,000 or $4,000 comic book from you at arm's length, you don't really have, for that big an investment, you don't have enough information to judge whether or not you're going to buy it. Now, deeper pockets, maybe I would be inclined to follow up afterwards, because if the first wave of people weren't interested in buying the whole thing, I can't imagine that the people who came later would have been, right? The people like myself who were motivated to get up in the morning, and I kind of had a price point in my head that would have potentially made sense if we could have made the deal. And also, they're asking, like in the listing, it says cash only. It's kind of unreasonable to think that somebody is, how many, I don't like walking around with $20,000 in cash in my pocket. It's just it's not necessarily a good idea. So maybe this was an entree for, some of the people that went through to, if I was more interested and the price was even maybe a little bit closer to what I thought it would be worth, then maybe I'd follow up and say, listen, do you still have the comics? This is what I can offer. That's reasonable. And I think that's part of their business model. I've been to Now, obviously, there's a time component for the seller, right? They're employed by the people who own that or have inherited the house and the collection. There was already a for sale sign out on the front lawn, so usually the heirs most likely want this stuff moved. So they can clean out the house and get moving on with the estate. I understand if dad was the one that collected it, the kids, maybe the widow, aren't necessarily interested in the collections. And there were multiple collections. There was a lot of stuff, and a lot of great stuff. I mean, the pictures were really enticing, certainly. So, they want to get everything gone, and get the best money they can for it. That's their business. And I'm not, and don't have the time to price all of these individual items. I mean, 19 long boxes of comics, it would take me a couple of weeks at best, if that was my full-time job, to go through that. Even if I was just pulling as quickly as I could, pulling out the keys and said everything else is $1 a book, right? It would take time. And that's not even talking about condition for, books that are worth, let's say, less than $50. You just say, okay, it looks kind of mid-grade. It's a $20 book. Boom. I'm not going to check for the Marvel value stamp on something like that if I'm trying to move 19 long boxes quickly. And they're also dealing with all of the other stuff in the house. Like I said, the baseball memorabilia, the Coca-Cola stuff, the Christmas decorations, and all that, and anything else that was ready to go. One of the best experiences I've had at an estate sale was with an estate sale company was they had bought a fairly large collection, and every single book was priced. And what was great was the higher value stuff was priced closer to fair market value. I walked right past that and went through the stuff that was $2, $3, $5, $10, and I was happy with that. I found some gems in there, but it's frustrating, and that's one of the reasons they limited the number of people in the house, because he couldn't be overwhelmed, and he was overwhelmed. This was probably, this was a very large collection, and it was a lot to be able to process like that. So, but I imagine the comics are probably still sitting in the house right now, and maybe over the next days, he'll be fielding phone calls for people who make the best offer. That will not be me. The other thing is, if you're going to an estate sale, don't have the gorilla hands. I mean, this one dude, he was manhandling the comic books. And even like I said, the stuff that I looked at, like that ASM 300, it was in the front of a box and people were picking up and shoving it back in because the boxes were so tight. That was, I mean, every time somebody else came in and looked at that book, it was probably in danger of being degraded, losing value. So that's my thing. So estate sales. Now, the other type of estate sale, which can be a little bit better, is if it's an estate sale, but it's more like a yard sale. Like the family themselves have decided to do it on their own, and just kind of move as much stuff as they can quickly. Or, somebody is downsizing, they're retiring, moving out of state, and they just want to get stuff gone. It might not be their stuff. The kid who was collecting the comics 30 years ago, is elsewhere, married, and has a family of his own, and isn't interested in the comic books that he collected when he was in high school anymore. That's a different animal, but you do have to be careful. And one of which I have done in the past, is contact the seller beforehand. They did say in the listing that there wasn't going to be any pricing information available before the sale, but I do kind of wish that they would have said the comic books are being sold as a lot. That would have decreased the traffic there for, somebody else I was there looking for promise. They weren't looking to buy a 19 long box collection, right? You're limiting who's interested in, You know, at that point, you're there. You're not going to buy anything, right? And what are you going to buy? You know, like a can opener or something. It just isn't worth it to get anything at the estate sale when you're coming for comic books and there's nothing to buy. At least if stuff was individually priced, it's like, okay, maybe I'll do digging here and I can find a few gems along the way, you know, like dollar bin diving kind of deal, but nothing like that. And I have heard of people who've had really great experiences at estate sales. It depends on the expertise of the person running the sale and what they think they can get for what they have. So let me know in the comments below is if you've gone to estate sales and had any success. It's really kind of frustrating when it's an all or nothing. And I almost understand it better when, and I've been in situations where you're standing outside the estate sale and you don't have one of the first numbers and you're waiting. The first batch of people come in and one of them comes out carrying all the boxes to his car. I understand that a little bit more than this, but it's frustrating, but I understand it from the perspective of the estate sale company. That's their business. It just would have been preferable for me and maybe some other people that came to look at the comics to have a little more information about that beforehand. So anyway, in the comments, let me know if you've had any positive or negative experiences at estate sales. This is my haul. Nothing. I don't have any comic books to show. Sorry about that. But I, spent 5 hours of my life that I'm not getting back. So you can take a look at a couple of my other videos here. And this is Jim saying until next time, enjoy your comics.